Welcome to Unapologetically ADHD. I'm Patricia Young, MSW, and I'm an ADHD former therapist and current coach.
I'm Alex McLaughlin, MSW and LICSW, and I'm an ADHD therapist. This is a podcast with two friends processing what it's like to live in body minds that diverge from neuronormative standards and everything that comes with it, the good, the bad, and the beautifully messy.
We aim to release 2 or more episodes per month. This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for help from a licensed mental health practitioner. Hey there and welcome. Hi, Alex. How are you doing today?
I am not feeling the best today, but otherwise doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. I forgot to turn the fan off. I'm actually having a nice day and feeling really connected, and I've had some sweet social connections. So I'm in quite a good place today, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah, and I'm sorry you're not feeling well.
I'm so glad for you.
Thank you. It sucks to not feel well. And we can have a whole episode about living in these meat bodies another time.
Yes. I feel like that would be a whole series.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a whole series. I feel like that would get into conversations about the overlapping chronic health conditions. And I don't know about you, but I could talk for hours and hours on those topics.
Yeah, I think those are things that we should talk about. Just not today. We are continuing our series on the DSM criteria for autism, and we're talking about what the DSM says and what our experiences of what it actually looks like, because the lived experience for me has been so different than what the DSM criteria is. So Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you and you're going to start us off on this.
Sweet. So we left off on criteria B, which is restricted, and this is the DSM language. We don't endorse it. Restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities as manifested by at least 2 of the following. So the first is, I'm going to rephrase this to be more affirming. So safety in stimming and safety and comfort in the use of objects or speech in a repetitive way. So I'm assuming our audience knows what stimming is, but in case they don't, do you want to give like a layperson definition?
Sure. Stimming, traditionally, we think of things like hand flapping, rocking, head banging, things that are very observable. But if you are late diagnosed, assigned female at birth, it may be things, and we'll talk more about this, but it could be something as simple as rubbing your toes together, chewing on the inside of your lip, counting, things that we do to regulate our nervous system. And there are so many ways of stealth stimming that we learn to do that we may not even recognize that we're doing it. And I have a story that illustrates this, but let's move forward, and then I'll share a little bit later.
Yeah, and I think also this is going to vary among other like non-white populations too, right? With how this might look. And I don't know about you, but I think that, right, knitting, crocheting can be a form of stimming. Stimming can also be listening to the same song on repeat, saying a phrase on repeat that just feels good in your mouth, in your body. I used to do a lot of, you talked about lip chewing. I used and still kind of chew the insides of my cheek. And that was a way for me to hide my stims. You know, other body focused repetitive behaviors like nail biting, skin picking, right? Those can be a form of stimming.
Pursing our lips, clenching our muscles, scratching ourselves, whether it's gently or more firmly, counting things. Yeah. Thank you,
Rocking
Alex.
back and forth or sideways.
Leg shaking, jiggling.
Yeah. So really it's like any repetitive movement or repetitive use of an object or a song or speech that provides self-soothing. So really the function of stims are to provide our nervous system with a soothing effect so that we can be kind of in a more regulated state. So when, teachers or parents will be like, stop rocking, stop hand flapping. It's like, no, but we need that. Like, do you want us to not be present and regulated? Okay, then we can do that. I say sarcastically, right? But, we need this. It's not an option.
Right. Also, shifting in your seat if you don't sit still or needing to stand, but shifting positions in your seat can be also another way of stimming. Or like my son has ruined so many phone cases because he likes to pop the corner off and pop it back on. So if you have a kid that chews on their shirt or, is always has a coin in their hand or things like that. My other son would chew his blanket and we had to keep buying him new blankets because he would just chew them. Yeah.
And right. I mean, I think this it can show up in like quote unquote socially acceptable ways, like using a
hair
fidget.
twirling.
Right. These can be just kind of normative things that like, and everyone stims. So neurotypical people stim too. It's just obviously seen more in autistic and ADHD populations.
Yeah.
The Dr. Neff, who is kind of like their blog post and the DSM and pictures breaking down autism. That's kind of what's guiding our conversation. And so they also give an example of lining up objects, creating elaborate organizational systems and collections. I love my systems. If you ask any of my like former colleagues, I love systems. And it just, I find them soothing to make them, but also like to follow them.
Yeah. Also watching shows on repeat is another one. And hummers. And humming is a great way to regulate your nervous system. It activates your vagus nerve. And so humming is a great way if you're anxious. But people, like my great aunt hummed all the time. Yeah. And the story that I was going to share, I was just talking with a friend today. There's a group of women. We're all older women, and we have a group that meets monthly on how we can make changes in the world right now. It's very uncomfortable going to this group just because of what's going on in the world. It's very hard for me, and hearing about it is very difficult. But at the last group meeting, we were all outside. The weather was warm. And I counted, and out of a group of maybe there were 20 of us, 3/4 of the people were doing some type of stimming. And whether it was, a thumb on their arm or twirling their hair or their foot moving up and down. And this friend that I was talking to, her body was perfectly still, but because she had sandals that were like flip-flops on, her toes were rubbing together. And when we were talking today about the next meeting, I said, I get so uncomfortable in these meetings. And I shared with her what I had observed and about her behavior. And she said she had no idea that she was doing it. And we talked about maybe what we need to do is also bring up in the group about what this is bringing up for people, because clearly 3/4 of the people visibly, not everybody had sandals on. So I don't know what was going in other people's feet with their closed shoes. And she was surprised that I noticed. And I did ask her, I'm like, does that creep you out that I, noticed that and called it out? And she said, no, not at all. But I think that's a way that I regulate, is that I get uncomfortable and I shift in my seat, and then I start noticing who's got glasses, who's got shoes on. And I was actively looking to see was there anybody else that I could tell was uncomfortable. And that's one of the behaviors that I do, is I'll count or find similarities or differences.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think, right, that's a great example of like how it serves as a self-soothing function, because like, right, obviously those are difficult conversations you're having because of the, right, you named like the world is on fire. You didn't say that, but that's my own words, and so I think, it's just a great example of how everybody does it. Yeah, it was reminding me too of another stim that I will see people do, like rubbing kind of like a fabric that feels really soft, and kind of like doing that
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly, smelling some like thing. So I don't remember if this is, to be honest, I don't remember where this fits in the criteria, but those of us that are autistic tend to not only, need sensory, like we pick up more of our environment because we have brains that are hyper connected. So we
Mm-hmm.
actually pick up more of the sensory environment, but we also sensory seek. And so that can be a form of stimming, is like rubbing something, smelling something repeatedly, things like that.
Touching other people, pushing, whether it's as an adult or a child. My son goes to the store, he always squeezes bags because of the sensory input. And I don't know if this is a crossover into the OCD, but I can't tell you how many people I know that smell their fingers, like will touch something and then smell their fingers. And so I think that's just
Mm.
another way that it's just sensory seeking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a kid I used to care for would like really just loved watching like water, and so like would get into mischief, would like grab cleaning solution he isn't supposed to grab, and would like play with it, but just enjoyed watching like
Mm-hmm.
the water move and stuff, and would
Mm-hmm.
also then take objects like really close to his face, and would just enjoy the visual aspect of it, so it can be visually stimming too.
Mm-hmm. Petting all the dogs and cats that you see if you're out walking or in public. That's me. Or if I
Mm.
go into a store and there are things like blankets, I want to touch them. I love sensory how things feel. So I like touching that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I've said this before, but when I got my evaluation and there was a question about, do you want to touch other people's hair? And I can't tell you how seen I felt. Like, I know that it's not appropriate. We don't
Mm.
touch other people's hair. But if I could go up and touch people's hair, textures like are fascinating to me.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Don't do that, everybody. You have to ask permission first.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience.
Somehow I just know we don't do that and it's not appropriate.
Mm. Well, I hope you have people in your life that allow you to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It can also be aversion to touch, not like being touched or hugged or that pressure.
Mm.
Sometimes people seek that, the swinging, the vestibular stimulation of swinging, spinning, rocking, heavy pressure. And some people just don't like the pressure at all.
Hmm. Yeah. I know for me, like I think I get motion sick real easily. So like I can't lay in a hammock
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. But yeah, some people like seek out that input, that sensory, that vestibular input,
Mm-hmm.
because that is just really soothing to them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else before we move on to the next criteria?
No, I think if you have kids that are sensory seeking, trampolines can be great. There's a safety issue. I'm not
Mm.
advocating you get a trampoline. I'm just saying they're great regulators if you have a kid that needs that input.
Mm-hmm. And they make swings too that you can install in your house, or even like I know they make hammock chairs.
Mm-hmm.
So I know plenty of people that have hammock chairs.
And ones that are pretty
Um,
covered, so it can be dark and quiet in there too.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So criteria B2 is, I'm going to reword this, safety in familiarity and routine. So this can show up like needing, to follow a morning or evening routine, and when that can't be followed, there can be a lot of distress that we experience. Or like if the routine is disrupted, like that can cause a lot of distress. Needing things to be predictable, kind of knowing what to expect ahead of time, right? This might present in someone asking a lot of questions like, oh, you're having a birthday party. Okay, who is all going to be there? How long do you think it'll last? Will there be music? You know what I mean? Like we need that information because that helps us feel safe if we kind of know what to expect. And
Mm-hmm.
then if things shift from what we're expecting, that can be really distressing to us.
Yeah, definitely. I would imagine that, especially if you're listening to this currently, fall 2026, those of us that have very 2025 in the future now. Thank you. Those of us that have a very strong sense of justice sensitivity of what's right and what's wrong, that what's going on in the world can be very dysregulating because of that idea of this is how things should go. This is what's fair. This is how I'm trying to be vague to not activate anybody. But that is one of the things that can be very dysregulating right now. Many of the things that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And the Dr. Enough gives some other examples, like particular rituals, for example, ways of greeting, morning routines, rituals before exams. And obviously, yeah, I already said that, but deviation from those rituals creates distress. Mm-hmm. So this is where it can get confusing, right? It can look like OCD, and maybe it is. Maybe there's both, right? And like if the function of what we're doing provides us safety rather than like it evokes a fear, then that kind of points to autism rather than OCD. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say that someone can't develop a fear. Like I used to have a fear of things, my routines being disrupted. And the fear that I had was based on like real sense data in the here and now, that when my routine is disruptive, I'm more likely to be irritable, have a meltdown, have a shutdown. Things are going to feel off all day. And so like I have data to point to, yes, this does cause me an impact versus like, oh, I'm afraid this person in my family is going to get seriously injured, right? Mm-hmm. It's a little different. The fear that can develop is different.
Yeah. I think too that if you have a certain way that you fold your clothes or hang your clothes or organize your closet by colors or ways that you set your shoes up, that those can be things, certain ways that you eat your food. I was just telling my husband the other night, we got a big bag of Halloween candy and I said, I want to dump it out and I want to sort it. I want to sort all the flavors together because that's how I like to eat it. And then I had some M&Ms the other night and I thought, I'm going to do it. So I, dumped out this little fun size packet and organized them by color, that those are things or rituals in the way that because I love food. Is there a way that you eat a Reese's peanut butter cup? Is there a way that you eat certain foods where maybe you eat around the edge or the top and then you eat the middle, or you save your favorite thing for last and you eat the things that you don't like first? Those can also be ways that we have routines and repetitive behaviors around things.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah. And I think too, like, at least for me, like if someone touches my stuff and it's in a different spot than it normally is, that for some reason, it's just really distressing to me.
Yeah.
Now, if I know that it's going to happen, or like if I can be the one to move it, then it's still distressing, but it's more tolerable. Mm-hmm. And so this can show up like someone just getting really possessive about I don't know if I like that word, but just kind of on edge about their belongings. And like if things are moved, or like if someone sits in their chair at the table, right? Like those kind of things just can be distressing. And I think it's important that we honor that for a person. And like, I don't know, I've heard of people get mocked for those kind of things. And that just breaks my heart that happens. So, yeah, it's not like we can talk our way, right? Like, yeah, we can do maybe some, like, kind of like, it's not I'm not gonna die because of this, right? Like, I think there's some cognitive reasoning, but I think it is like, at least for me, it feels like I can't really think my way out of it. Like, it's a physiological response that I have when things are disrupted.
Yeah. My husband knows, like, don't touch my stuff, don't move my stuff. And if something I can't see, I joke that I'm a blamer. And same with my son, that often I'll say, repeat after me, son, I'm a blamer, like my mother. and we can joke about it because he and I are very quick to assume that somebody has messed with our stuff, and we know it. And so that's just how we deal with it. And we have two recliners in our living room. When Steve and I bought furniture, the kids weren't coming home a lot. They didn't have partners. So we really did not do a great job picking out furniture. But Steve and I each have our own recliner. And then when the kids come to visit with their partners, they know that this is mom's chair, and I like to be the one to sit in my chair if they're here. And my son at one point had a girlfriend who would sit in the chair, and I would have to ask her to move. And it's interesting that the subsequent partners that are coming and going, that they'll sit in it and then they'll say, do you want your chair? And like, if you ask me, then I'm fine. But if you don't say anything to me, then I'm like, that's my chair. And it makes me really grouchy. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find that like it's hard to kind of reason your way out of it as well?
Yes. And I have a hard time asserting myself. That it really helps when, if I'm asked, then I'm like, it doesn't matter. And I'm really happy to sit somewhere else. But if I'm not asked, that sense of like, you're in my space and you're not acknowledging that this is my chair, because it's a known fact. Like, this is mom's chair. It's the only chair in the living room that I claimed, space to. But yeah. And I think we also can have very big reactions when things happen, either underreact or overreact. And it's interesting that I'm not going to share what it is because it's personal family stuff, but we got information on the phone the other day, and I didn't say anything. We were on speakerphone, and I think I was internally processing so much information, but I felt like I should have said something, and I just didn't. My husband responded, so it was fine, but I wondered, and we talked about it afterwards, because I was having such a mix of feelings about this information. I could have been happy. I could have been disappointed. I was looking at logistics, and I just couldn't say anything. And I think it's common for us to have very big reactions or to not have any reaction in the moment, and then realize that we should have had either a bigger, or not should have, but that our reaction was maybe more than what the situation called or less than what the situation called for.
Yeah. I hear you. And like, I don't know, I'm kind of having a moment where, you don't, never worked in schools. So like, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I forget, I think it's called social thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a curriculum that's often used. You've heard of it?
My kids went through the social emotional curriculum, so I'm not sure if it's the same thing. So please share.
So it's like a type of curriculum. I believe it was created for autistic folks, and there's, I don't know, a lesson in there called Size of the Problem, where, you go through examples of like, kid walks into a classroom and someone's using his favorite pencil or something, and like, this is his reaction. And, you have like, the kids are supposed to kind of rate like, what's the size of the problem? And like, there's different kind of guidelines for that. On one hand, right, I see where the creators of the curriculum are coming from. And on the other hand, I feel like that can be really minimizing, because like, our nervous system is having a reaction, and like, whether or not the reaction like, quote unquote, fits, it's still happening. And so like, it feels like it could be minimizing to be like, oh, our reaction is too big. You know what I mean? Like I hear what you're saying logically. I hear what you're saying. And like, and even like, I'm taking this like somatic trauma therapy training, and they talked about, one of the modules talked about like, oh, is my reaction right now kind of fit the situation? And I'm like, I don't know if I feel like that. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, your nervous system's still having the reaction, and like,
Sure.
I don't know. I think it's important to honor that. It's usually not tied to logic, right? Like,
Yeah.
but there's something there. There's a reason our nervous system is having that reaction, and that's valid.
I'm wondering if the difference, because you and I talked about this about another situation. So I'm wondering if part of what you're saying is the reaction that we have is fine. How we manage that reaction is something different, that the feeling and the reaction is valid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I scream at someone if they sit in my chair.
I don't know. I mean, like, I think that if your nervous system is telling you that like, this is how you need to react. And like, yeah, I think that my value is right to not scream at the people I care about or anyone in general.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're jumping into that kind of fight flight energy, that sympathetic response, we're not always in control of what's happening and like how our nervous system is responding. And so like, yeah, like maybe that's not within your values to do. And like when your nervous system is reading something as like danger,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't know. Like I can understand why someone's nervous system would respond in that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And I think we could not argue, but we could discuss this from so many different frames of references, because I know of people that have meltdowns when they get dysregulated and the things they do are not okay. They're not helpful to their families. They're not safe things. And so is that honoring them and the people around them if that's what they do? And I also know that if you're late diagnosed and high masking, there's a good chance that you internalize. So you people please, you fawn, you find another way to, you skin pick, you self-harm, you use food. So on the outside, it may look like you're socially very, quote, whatever appropriate means for lack of a better word, but we don't know what's going on inside. So I think there's so many factors to this, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I just think that there are, for the people that internalize, it's probably better to learn to speak up. And for the people that act in ways that make people feel unsafe or uncomfortable, maybe there are some tools that they could learn for self-regulation. So I think it's situation dependent, but our feelings are our feelings.
Yeah. I think I think for me, like that's maybe the thing is like the feeling is valid. Right, how your nervous system is responding is valid.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean, right, that maybe it's within your values. And when you're kind of in that shutdown or that fight flight response, like a lot of that is or can be out of your control. And like, yeah, you can learn ways to kind of weave in some like parasympathetic energy. Yeah. I guess like for me, it's just like, I don't know. I don't tell people that their reaction is too big.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, that just feels invalidating.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think is maybe the main thing. And I feel like this is an important conversation. And I'm like, I just want to recognize that. Mm-hmm. I just went off on a whole fucking tangent.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I think along with that, though, it is not being able to let things go and needing to be upset or frustrated or have whatever feelings we have for as long as we need to. And I think people that don't process this way will often tell us to get over it, to let it go, to just move on. And I just know that I'm going to feel what I feel until I don't feel it anymore, and to be okay with that. And that's also part of how we process things.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, if we could stop perseverating on a thing, we fucking would, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's not fun to be stuck on something for so long. And like, that's just how our brains tend to work. I'm not saying that everyone that's autistic, right, engages in perseveration. And I think the vast majority of us do. And so it's not like we're choosing to be stuck on it. We're probably doing what we can to not get stuck on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I like your point about just letting ourselves and or loved ones take up that time and space that they need to kind of work through it in the way that their nervous system needs to work through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also having rules that are very clear can be very calming for us. And when the rules change, that can be very undoing, or how come it's okay in this situation or that situation. And I volunteer with horses on the weekends, and there's a woman who works where I volunteer, and I taught a lesson. I didn't teach a lesson. I was leading a horse in a lesson, but the horse was being a little bit pushy. And so I had asked afterwards, when she had time, could she help me understand what I could do differently? And what I love is, it would not surprise me if she's not autistic. And when I was talking to somebody else there, she's very direct. She says what she means, which I appreciate, but she always gives me context for things. And for example, she said, when the horse does that and you correct him, were you giving the horse space after that? And I totally forgot about giving the horse space, totally forgot. But she explained that, if you correct the horse and then part of how you reward them is you loosen up on the lead, which I did, but you also need to physically back off and give them space. And so if I'm too close to the horse is going to be using his nose and his head to kind of keep trying to get me out of his space. But when she gives me that context, it feels like it's information and I don't feel like, well, you didn't give the horse space. And then I go into shame over it. And I love that she always provides context, which information for us can feel it makes sense. We have a lot of questions. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this actually gets into another criteria.
Okay.
Where I'm trying to think where that is. Maybe we already reviewed it. It's been a minute since we've. Okay, I'm just seeing that we kind of already talked about B4. Is it okay to transition to the next criteria?
You bet.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess I just want to say it because I'm not seeing it here, but we do, and maybe that is part of the last criteria, but like having direct, explicit kind of directions or ideas about how things are going to go does provide us that safety, and that context is really incredibly helpful because, like, I don't know about you, but my brain is like, but why? Like, I need to know the why in order for, maybe it's a PDA thing, but in order to kind of get myself on board. And so when people ask why, like, we're really not trying to be difficult. We're just trying to understand so that we can know the context and we can kind of respond appropriately and understand the why. And I think, I don't know, I think a beauty of PDA is that we kind of like question the status quo. And I think that's a beautiful thing because, like, sometimes there are rules that don't make sense or that only serve a certain subset of the population. And, like, I think it's important that we do question those things. But yeah, having vague rules or like things not be clear can be really distressing for us.
Yeah. Well, I wonder too, and this is purely anecdotal, that we have so much hyperconnectivity in our brains that if there's a rule and it makes sense and we can connect it to something else, but if it's just a free floating rule and it doesn't make sense, we want to understand the meaning behind it. That's just kind of how we're wired. Yeah.
And I think, I don't know about you, but for me, that can activate my justice sensitivity because if it doesn't make sense or if it's being applied in ways that are unfair, then I'm like, well, why does that person get to not follow the rule? But like I have to, or this other person has to. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So the next criteria is B3, which is, again, reframing this live to be strengths-based and not deficit-based. Safety in passionate interests. So this can look like having one, or if you're an ADHD or even I think, autistic people maybe don't just have the one interest and that's it, right? We might have multiple interests throughout our life, but we can really deep dive into an interest and have a hard time putting that down. But we want to learn like everything there is to know about the interest. We can spend hours on it. Again, this is really regulating and soothing for our nervous systems, is to have that time engaging in our interests.
Yeah. And we typically think of things like trains or dinosaurs, but we don't think about animals, horses, welfare of animals, psychology, relationships, crafting, gardening, cooking, health, fitness. All of those things can be special interests, but because they're very mainstream, they're not seen as being a special interest. Reading. Often kids are hyperlexic. They learn to read early and they're just voracious readers, and they always have their nose in a book because they're learning about what they're interested in through what they read, but nobody thinks about it that way. What else did I miss, Alex?
No, I think that kind of covers it. And I think that's why, right, non-stereotypical presentations can get diagnosed later in life, is because the interests we might have are socially acceptable. And I think as someone who people used to be, I mean, they still are my interest. Like, I learned how to mask by just paying so much attention to how people interact with each other, and kind of like I've internalized, right, social norms and rules by just observing people and watching people be people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that can make it harder to get identified, because that's, especially for AFAB, like that's socially, that's kind of what's expected of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, we tend to be great at trivia, knowing lots of random facts, that we find that stuff very interesting. Yeah.
And I would say, like, maybe not always the general trivia, but like trivia for our interest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if someone's interest is movies, right, they're probably really great at that, like movie trivia. I will say that this can show up too where someone has a hard time talking about a topic that is not of interest to them. Like, we kind of don't know how to engage. We don't have interest in like just a small talk or random topics. And we might try and bring conversations back to our topics of interest, just because we get a lot of joy and regulation from engaging in interests that way too, like through conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess it's the last one for the criteria B. There's still a few more criteria, but those are more of like, it has to be, you know, we'll get into that. But so criteria B is just sensory differences. So I'm not a fan of these words, but I think people understand what this means is hyper or hyposensitivity. So being extra connected and extra aware of sense information, or being under responsive. So I personally think the under responsiveness comes from having hyper connected brains, and then it's just too much. So we kind of dissociate a little bit, and we maybe aren't as aware of the sense information. Do you want to talk about like beyond the five senses, like the other three senses?
Tell me what they are.
Vestibular, proprioceptive, and interoceptive.
Oh, thank you. I'm having to kind of pull my knowledge all together. Interoceptive is hunger, thirst, having to go to the bathroom. So that means that we may not recognize that we have to go to the bathroom, or by the time we recognize it, we have to hurry. We may forget to eat all day. We may forget to drink. Like, I have to have a hydro flask, and it just makes me, sometimes it just makes me mad that I have to drink. Like, I don't want to drink, and it just really makes me mad. So knowing if we're tired, we're hungry, our temperature regulation. Proprioceptive is where our, I may need some help from you, Alex, because I'm just not thinking about this. Proprioceptive is where our body is in space. So we often bump into things. We can appear to be clumsy. And I can't tell you how many times I've knocked into the corner of my bed when I make my bed in the morning, and like the bed hasn't moved and I know where that corner is, and I just knock into it. So not having a sense of where our body is in space, and we often have bruises that we don't remember where we got them from. What else am I missing about proprioceptive, Alex?
I think this can also show up in like not knowing how much force we're using. So we might set things down really loudly, or kind of walk loudly, because we're not really aware, again, where our body is in space, or our body is in connection with objects. And so, you know, sometimes people are like, are you mad? And I'm like, no, why? They're like, you're slamming the like cabinets. I'm like, oh, I just didn't realize how hard I was doing it. And I think so, like, using weighted items provides proprioceptive input, or like tight, you know, some people really like tight clothing, because that provides us with that proprioceptive input. But yeah, I think otherwise you hit everything.
What about interoception? Was there anything that I missed that felt important?
Oh, emotions.
Emotions. Why don't you, since you know what you're thinking, just not knowing how you're feeling?
Yeah, so we might not know if you ask us how we're feeling emotionally, because we're not really as connected to our interoception.
Yeah. Yeah. And for vestibular, I'm not sure. Are you just talking about, yeah, why don't you say it so that I'm not guessing?
To be honest, I think I'm gonna have to guess, or I can look it up.
Mm-hmm.
So vestibular is the body's sense of balance, motion, and spatial orientation.
Okay. Okay.
So this helps us maintain balance, coordinate eye movements, stabilize posture. So some people, like we kind of talked about with like spinning, some people maybe have their vestibular input is they need a lot of vestibular input in order
Mm-hmm.
to like feel their vestibular system, and so they might do a lot of spinning or swinging or like being upside down, because it kind of helps them feel more embodied.
Mm-hmm.
Or the opposite for me, like I get really dizzy really easily. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
spin in a circle, I'm dizzy.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm on a video call with someone and they're moving around, or the video's moving around or the camera,
Mm-hmm.
I get really dizzy.
Yeah, I have that also. Yeah. It can also be difficulty filtering out background noise. And I've noticed recently that if I'm watching TV and one of my kids is here and they're watching TikTok, that it's too exhausting for me to constantly filter out the noise that's in the background. Hard time
Because
regulating
our
your.
brains,
Go ahead.
well, and our brains literally are wired in a way where we have a harder time doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if there's a humming that we can hear, our brains can't physically cannot filter that out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a matter of like, am I not trying hard enough? It's like, no, literally, our brain just can't do that, or
Yeah.
takes a lot of effort to make that happen.
And I think that when you're not aware, you're just not aware. And recently I've noticed that Steve and I, my husband and I, will go into a store and I'm like, it is so loud in here. And so yesterday we went out somewhere and after we ordered, we ordered something to go. I said, I'm going to be waiting outside. Or he said, do you want to stand outside? Because he knows how sensitive I am to that. But it can be smells like perfumes, things that are very strong, going down the detergent aisle in the grocery store. That might be too much difficulty regulating your temperature. All of a sudden, I notice like I'm just hot, like I just want to strip off my clothes, or all of a sudden I notice like, oh, my feet are cold, my hands are cold. That those are some of the ways that it also shows up. Or preferences or avoidance with food and textures, that we either gravitate towards things that we really enjoy the texture. There's a dried fruit that I love and it's not being carried anymore in the stores. And I'm just craving this texture. It's dried papaya. Not the it's like crystallized. So I'm just craving the sensation of when I bite through it and what it feels like, and I just can't fight it. And it's not the chewy stuff. Or it could be avoiding things. I know a lot of people don't like things like eggs, or if they're not cooked a certain way, that I'm just not going to say it to gross anybody out. But yeah.
Yeah, and right, I think kind of we jumped ahead a little bit earlier, but talking about the like sensory seeking, I think that falls here too. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're saying, kind of needing that certain texture with the papaya, like yeah, that provides us with soothing, like grounding, kind of getting more embodied and into our experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you can think of, Alex, that we haven't talked about?
I'm sure not at this moment. I'm sure once we end, I'll be like, oh yeah, this, and this. I forgot to say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I
I
think
mean, it
that's
can
it
be
for now.
liking hair in your face, not liking hair in your face. I use these clips for my hair that I really like, but somebody that's close to me, I gave her a clip and she's like, I don't like how it feels in my hair. And then all of a sudden I started to think like, how does this feel in my hair? And I often have to take it out now because I just never thought about it, which I think is often what happens when we start to realize that we're autistic and we don't know about these things. And all of a sudden we're like, how does that feel? Oh, I don't like that. I like this. I don't like that. So it often for me feels like I'm way more autistic than I was before I learned I was autistic.
I feel that. Yeah, for me, it used to be like I used to knit a bunch of like wool things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I like, and like it was itchy before and like it was bothersome, but like I would just wear it because I'm like, while other people wear it. I just kind of like gaslit myself into like thinking it was okay, right? But then once I was diagnosed, it's like finally I have permission to have a reason. Like there's a reason that I now can know of why this is bothersome, and now I can't wear anything that's like even. Well, I am wearing the scarf. It's a little itchy, but like, you know, I just can't. I can't with unless it's smart wool or like merino wool. I can't.
I have a friend who I suspect is autistic, and we were talking about knitting and crocheting, and she says she can't knit anymore because the sound of the knitting needles, you know, clicking against each other drives her crazy. And so again, the comfort that you get from the repetition of the knitting may override that sound, or it may not be as sensitive, but for her, the sound is just, that's a deal breaker for her. Yeah. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I was just going to say this has been lovely. Sorry, I feel part of me wants to apologize for being like, oh, it's a quick little to finish up category B. That wasn't that quick, but that's fine.
It's all good. It's all good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we will see you next time. Alex, why don't you let people know where they can find you and what things you have to offer?
Sure. So I have a therapy and assessment practice, as well as a coaching, consulting, and training practice. The therapy and assessment practice is for folks on Wapakoti land, colonized as Minnesota. That is www.thedivergentgrovetherapy.com. I offer individual groups, assessments, like I said. And then the coaching and consulting practice is Divergent Grove unlearningcollaborative.com. How about you? What have you got going on?
I want to say I got nothing, but that's not true. I have another podcast called Unapologetically Sensitive. You can find this podcast and my other podcast at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I work online internationally providing coaching. I was a therapist for 17 years. I now provide coaching for late identified, late diagnosed. You suspect you might be ADHD, ADHD folks. And I'm very relational in the work that I do. We can do parenting, relationships, work things, having accommodations, understanding how you're wired, helping get systems into place. I think I said parenting. I can't remember. That's it. And if you want to reach out to us, you can.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say yes. I think you did say parenting.
Yeah. And if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at unapologeticallyadhd@gmail.com. I think that's it. Thanks for being here and have a great day.
Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Jinx.
Thanks for spending time with us in this space where your too muchness is never too much. Remember, you're not broken and you're definitely not alone. We're here to honor the complexity, celebrate the nuance, and walk this neurodivergent path together.
You might consider giving us a rating and a review on the platform you listen to podcasts. It gives others an opportunity to see our podcast and walk this path with us. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind to your nervous system, and stay unapologetically ADHD. You belong here.